Hello Garrett. Before I start this video, I have to tell you that this one is gonna be a little bit different to the previous one since I had no one to record this video with. So it's gonna be only me trying to explain to you what I was thinking about and how I started to build my lesson plan up. Alright, let's get started. I would love to talk about nouns. I think when we talk about nouns, it's very important to start it with the definition. A noun is the name of a person, a place, a thing, or an animal. It can be either concrete or abstract. We have four types of nouns: common, proper, collective, and abstract. A common noun is the name of a common thing or a general thing. For example, cat or horse. A proper noun is the name of a person or a place. For example, John or Venice. We can talk about collective nouns, which is a name of things that are together as a group. For example, pod or fleet or flock. Sorry. And we can also talk about abstract nouns. It can be a state, for example, sleep, action, laughter, for example, or a quality, for example, sadness. We can also distinguish countability. It can be either countable or uncountable. Countable nouns, when we use the plural form, we usually just put an S in front of the noun. When we talk about uncountable nouns, we need the measure of quality. So for example, 3 liters. So let's have 2 examples. For example, we can talk about 1 horse and it becomes 2 horses. We can talk about 1 liter of beer and we can talk about 2 liters of beer. We can talk about the plural and singular version of nouns. When the noun ends with an S, Z, CH, SH, or X, we simply add ES to the end of the noun. So for example, this is how we do it with the word box. That's how it becomes boxes. Lunch becomes lunches. If the noun ends with a Y, we just erase the Y, we replace it with an I plus add ES to the end of the noun. That's how baby becomes babies and hobby becomes hobbies. We also have some Anglo-Saxon words that have a plural form. For example, tooth becomes teeth, foot becomes feet. We have nouns that can either be singular or plural. For example, deer and species. We have nouns that ends with an O. We can either put an S to the end of the noun. For example, that's how radio becomes radios and video becomes videos. But sometimes we put ES to the end of the noun, meaning tomato becomes tomatoes, potato becomes potatoes. We also have nouns from different languages. We usually use the that version of the word. For example, memorandum becomes memoranda, stimulus becomes stimuli. And this is exactly what I wanted to tell you about nouns. This is basically just like a summary, so I could actually show you that I know what I was about to tell you about. I mean, you're gonna see it in my next video. I have my lesson plan for the students. I'm going to try to present it to you, which will be a little bit difficult because, as you will see, there was no one to record it with. but I'm really hoping that you will be satisfied with it because I really tried to do my best. As you see, this video will be a lot different to the previous one since I had no one to record this video with, but I'm gonna try my best. I designed this plan for students on intermediate level, so it's not gonna be that difficult, but it will also require previous knowledge of certain words. I'm gonna talk about nouns first. I will start the whole lesson with a warmer, obviously. What I was thinking about was I would point at different objects in the classroom. For example, if there was a clock on the wall, or I would point at the chairs or a table, and the students have to recognize it. And after it happened, and if they didn't know a word, I would just write it on the whiteboard, so later on they will be aware of them and they will memorize them. After we are done with this part, they will have a certain idea about what's going to happen. In the introduction part, I would like to use my assistant teacher's help. We will have a short conversation about nouns. So for example, I will have an apple in my hand and the assistant has to describe this apple. So for example, that's a concrete noun. It's an apple, meaning it's singular, and also a common noun. After this part is done, I will move on to the presentation part. I will write 20 words on the whiteboard, and after I'm done with this, I will start to ask the students about nouns in general. So for example, what kinds of nouns they know about. For example, if they know the difference between concrete and abstract nouns, if they can name any of those, and also the 4 different types of nouns, if they can actually name them, or if they can tell me examples. If they can't, that's not exactly a problem, because that's why I'm there, that's why I'm teaching them. So if we get stuck and we can't carry on, then I would just pause for a little bit. I would give them a little bit of time to think about it, and if I see that they struggle with it, I would just write it on the whiteboard without any problems, because I think it's better just to carry on doing it instead of pushing someone for no reason when you obviously see that that person doesn't know the answer for your question. So after I'm done with this, I'm gonna send you an attached file in my next email. I made a little bit of a draft. I will actually draw on the whiteboard. That's gonna be exactly what I expect from the students. So after we are done with this part, I would point at the students one by one, asking them to answer if they recognize this noun. For example, I would say I would write down 2 chairs. If they can tell that it's plural, it's a common noun, and it's also a concrete noun. I will do it with 20 different nouns. They will be collective nouns, proper nouns, also abstract nouns, because I think those are quite difficult to actually understand and memorize that. But I'm sure that after a while they'll be able to distinguish them, and they will be able to use them properly. After we are done with this part, I will move on to the practice part, meaning I will wipe the whiteboard completely, so it will be completely blank. They will have no chance to look at it, they will have no chance to have any help from the table, from the whiteboard. So they will have to think a lot about it, and this way I will force them to recognize and actually revise the rule and all the rules basically. So yeah, this way they'll be able to actually use the nouns properly. I will write 20 different nouns on the whiteboard this time, so I will also ask them one by one, just pointing it at each student, and they will have the chance to stand up and tell what they think about it. If they don't know the answer, that's not an issue either. I will just give him another chance, so he will be able to correct himself. And I think that's quite a good point, to have a chance to actually stand up. You can make mistakes, because I think there is no such a thing as a mistake. You can only it might be not correct, but there is no wrong answer. I mean, this is my philosophy, to be honest. The point is, I would love to encourage them, and I would love them to talk as much as possible, because that's the base of language learning, because they will have to speak all the time if they go abroad or if they want to practice the language. That's the best way you can get familiar with it. Just as I told you, this video was a lot different compared to the previous one, since I literally had no one to record it with, so I could only tell you my plan for this lesson. I really hope you will be satisfied with it, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.